And hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of So How'd You Get Here? I'm Angelo. This is Tony. And today we have a very special guest, and I'm going to say your last name correctly. Here we go. Craig Greiwe.
Oh, congratulations.
Two Italians saying a German name.
That's right.
We got it right.
Did it. I practiced it like 9 times
so many
before.
Madison Cawthorn references there.
All right. Well, you have so many credits over here. I don't even know where to start. So
we should probably start with the theme of the show. So how'd you get here?
All right.
I mean,
like, where are you from? And when you
I was
came
going
out
to
to
say,
LA?
like, I don't drive my car anymore, so that was a blast this morning. Like,
yeah.
I was super excited. I was like, oh wow, yes, the homeless problem is definitely real.
Yeah, sadly.
No, I grew up in rural Indiana.
Okay.
Right? So,
Hoosiers.
So, have you seen the movie Hoosiers?
We have.
Yes, Gene Hackman.
My town was the town next door.
Okay.
Still like that. 70 years later, like hasn't changed. And I mean, we had 274 kids in my freshman class, and we graduated with like 150, like high school.
And 149 played basketball.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I was the one who did not.
Were you the guy who shoots the grandma shot from the granny shot? What is that called?
Horrible. Yeah. I was horrible at sports. Mike Pence's congressional district, long before he was crazy.
Okay.
And oops. And I mean, it was a place where like you did not know what the world was like. I didn't meet a black person until my senior year in high school when a couple in town adopted 8 Haitian children.
Oh,
and
wow.
You just weren't exposed to it.
Yeah,
Like, it wasn't anywhere. I mean, it was also Indiana, so like it wasn't like we were in the middle of a bustling civic enterprise.
Right.
And
Wabash, Indiana. Been there twice.
Oh,
all 12 people.
Oh yeah, Wabash.
My best friend's right from there, so yeah.
Okay, I went to DePauw, which is just down the street, a rival there for a bit, and then I grew up like so poor. You couldn't afford shoes. Like literally, like you had to tape the soles of your shoes to your feet and like, everything else. And so when I think about like, I now have a shoe wall because like they say they say your child is responsible for everything in your life, which is true in that case. I have a whole wall of sneakers now. And I didn't even know what you did in life. I didn't know how you get out of that. I was orphaned at 14. I got a job and an apartment because they don't care about child labor laws in Indiana. And so it was like, cool. And then I literally was like, how do you...
Wait, they let you sign for your own apartment at 14 years old?
Yeah, it's like not a thing in Indiana.
As long as you could pay the bills or like...
Yeah, I don't even remember signing anything. I just remember giving somebody cash. for all I know. So I literally had this moment in high school where I was like, how do you go to college? It's not a thing.
What is the main industry of trade there? Is it coal or is it lumber?
Corn,
like
soybeans.
farming industry. Yeah.
Like every time people pay like $12 to eat edamame out here, I'm like, there's like fields full of soybeans where I grew up, and they're not $12.
Monsanto, Kroger, all those guys.
So it was all farmers. I mean, I grew up surrounded on 3 sides by cornfields and the 4th side by a dirt road and a forest. Right, like it was crazy town, and I figured out how to go to college. I got a scholarship because it turns out like a poor little orphan child is a very appealing target for scholarships.
Yeah.
I learned how to like tell that story in a way that would be financially beneficial to me. And so
where'd you end up going?
DePauw in Indiana. Where I got into a whole lot of trouble, administrative trouble, because orphans have problems with authority figures. So I got into a battle. Got into a battle with the administration. It turns out that they were forging the credentials of minority professors in order to make them qualified to hire more of them. And I went public with that information. Didn't go over well. Then I went out to USC.
Okay.
Where I had never been to LA before. Sat down at the welcome picnic, and some girl said she was from Ontario. I said, "Why'd you move here from Canada?" So she did not take that kindly, and then I figured out LA was a very different place. And fast forward,
Why'd you move here from Canada? I'm from...
And so then I was at USC living my best life because everybody there was pretty and the sun was always shining, and we were in the middle of a drought, so it didn't rain once in 2 years.
So this was what, late 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah, 2002 to 2004.
Okay. Got it.
And then
because when I moved here in 2004, that's when they got the most amount of rain ever.
Yes, it's it was. I remember that year, Will McCormick was hosting the Critics' Choice Awards. And it rained that night and washed out the red carpet. And he opened his bit by saying, God said he would never flood the earth again, but then he took one look at Hollywood and was like, yeah,
I'm making an exception. Yeah, they said they got more rain that year than they had the last 9 years combined.
That is crazy. That is correct. I remember that because we were working on Hotel Rwanda that year, and going the award circuit route.
Sorry, I got you off track.
No. And so I ended up as an intern at Warner Brothers, where I asked everybody where I could do anything.
You started out in the mailroom at Warner Brothers, correct?
Yeah, mailroom intern. I ran around and asked anybody.
I started at Fox in Building 59 for Joe Hartwick.
Okay.
Throwing out trash, running things around my little golf cart. That was my job.
I asked everyone, like the person who ran my internship didn't have anything for me to do, so I just went desk to desk and was like, "Do you have anything for me to do?" And this one woman, Monica, who was an assistant there, she's like, this is back when things got filed. She said, all I have is this filing, and you don't want to do that. I said, I'll do it, but on one condition: can I read everything, and can I ask you questions if I don't understand? And she was like, sure. Sat there for a week, filed what was like 3 feet tall worth of paper, learned everything anyone needed to know about film marketing and publicity. And then the next week was in a meeting with the head of publicity, and she asked a question, and typical, like, no one raised their hand to answer. So in the back of the room, like, the intern raised their hand and says, oh yeah, it would be this, 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 and this. And she was like, who are you?
Yeah, who are you?
You're like Michael J. Fox in The Secret of My Success. You know what I mean?
And she's like, do you want to work on this? I was like, sure. So I ended up not being an intern, got hired as a consultant, and then the rest was history. And it was
so you kind of fell into
No,
PR.
you did the work is what you did.
I did the work, which is my fundamental philosophy, but it's just do the damn work.
Love it.
Do the damn work.
Right.
Thank you. Finally, see, it does pay off sometimes.
So many people. And I fell backwards into everything I did. I actually haven't interviewed for a job in 15, 16 years. Every job has just been one segue to the next.
Well, we're interviewing you right now, just so you know.
Valid.
Right. I don't know.
There may be 3 hosts by the end of this show.
Yeah. I can leave if you want to be here, because I don't know how to use this.
I don't know. I would be a really poor
hands.
I can sit here and I can hold a mug. You have technical equipment that I would be like, I was like, ooh. Yeah.
That's why we partnered up.
That's why we partnered up.
That's why he's got all this fancy stuff.
He's the face. I'm the talent. So you, sir, you got put up on this job because you did the work, and then what did that lead to?
More jobs, more work, more people who kept telling me that they were like, someday you're gonna be like, you're gonna run this town. And I was like, that's cute, that's nice, that's the thing you say to encourage people.
Yeah, of course.
And so then I realized along the way I was at Disney, so I went through a whole lot of crazy campaigns. I've never, everything from Hotel Rwanda at MGM and DeLovely, which was a Cole Porter musical. Try making America fall in love with the Cole Porter musical. They love Cole Porter. A Cole Porter musical with a lot of gay sex, not so much.
It's a niche.
Yeah, very niche, very niche.
But if Ryan Murphy produced it now, it might be a hit.
It'd be a hit in its first season, and then it would be really crappy in its second season, right? So
that's true.
Then MGM, Warner Brothers, Disney, and then I was at Disney, and I looked at my boss, and I was like, I don't want to be my boss. I don't want their job. I don't want to do this. And lawyers looked sexy on TV, so I was like, I should go to law school. I did not want to be a lawyer. I just wanted to look like a sexy lawyer on TV.
It's all about goals.
So I didn't really study. I took a book to the park every weekend in the Hancock Park, which is not in Hancock Park, the neighborhood, but Hancock Park is that park around LACMA.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Typical. Oh yeah. Typical inexplicable Los Angeles is Hancock Park. The park is not in Hancock Park, the neighborhood.
Exactly.
Filled with tar pits emitting methane. So I was studying my book while surrounded by methane, which may have explained a lot about the destruction I've wreaked on Havoc on. I've never done drugs.
Yeah.
But
methane.
Mainstream drugs.
Yeah. Mainstream drugs. You want to huff methane out of a tar pit,
while studying for your law
it's a great
degree.
date spot.
I could not afford to go to law school because I was still poor. I was an assistant, and then a coordinator or whatever. And then, so I was like, I'm just going to take the LSAT to see what happens. But it turned out if you do well on the LSAT, they send you a bunch of waivers, so you don't have to pay to apply to law schools, and then people start sending you scholarships. And at this point, I knew how to sell the orphan story.
Yeah.
Right. So use what the good Lord gave you, and I ended up on a full ride at Columbia in New York. The one thing I vowed when I was going to law school was that I was not going to go to law school in New York, and it turns out that karma has come back a lot of times.
Full scholarship to New York.
Yeah. Wow. So so I was there. once again ran into trouble with the administration because orphans have problems with authority figures. Finished there, came back to LA, did a whole lot of fun, crazy, wild things there, and then worked for Quinn Emanuel, which is an amazing litigation firm in LA, while starting to consult for all of my old bosses. And then eventually, a year and a day, I literally asked the law firm, how long do I have to work here? And God bless his soul, a mentor of mine, the late Bill Urquhart, said, give me a year and a day. So at a year and a day, I walked into his office and I was like, yo, I'm out. He laughed and he was like, great. It was, by that point, I was consulting for all of my old bosses, launching DirecTV's original programming. Back then, not everybody was creating original programming.
Right.
So like it was like a new thing then. What was a traumatic experience. It was I don't know if you know the show Rogue. It went on to successfully like 5 seasons with Tandy Newton. But this is notable because I keep getting handed the problem child projects. Like, so this was their very first original series that they spent way too much money on. And I remember, so the inciting incident in the pilot is in the first 3 minutes, they shoot a first grader in the forehead in front of his school, and they kill him. And I remember being on the treadmill at the gym and the news crawl about like the Newtown school shooting, and they shot up a bunch of first graders, and I was like, 6 weeks before we were to debut, I was like,
that's getting pulled.
Nope.
No.
I asked. I was told no. I was told make it work.
What?
We did make it work. It became the #1 hit in DirecTV's history. Like if 1 out of 4 people who had DirecTV watched the pilot of that show, like if we had been on network television, it would be the equivalent of MASH. Like it was like we made it work.
Yeah.
It was hard. And then, one thing led to another, and I ended up having my own agency, which I did not intend on doing.
Do you think that was because of it was relevant at the time rather than considered offensive?
No, people definitely found it offensive, and the filmmakers would not change it. I hid it from all of our marketing
until it was too late to
it was too late to turn in. And then they wouldn't move it, but they moved it after the first 3 minutes, because we did market testing that if we got people in on the first 3 minutes and then we shot the first grader, that they would stay watching the show. So like it ended up doing its job. But
then I remember a show like Sons of Anarchy had like season 4, they had a kid bringing Uzi to school, and like, so, but that was after. So they
we were
basically
the first brunt of that.
Right.
And the filmmakers showed the bullet hitting the kid.
Oh yeah, they didn't show it. They just showed.
Yeah, it was super fun.
The kid like had a gun. Yeah.
It was. It's. The things that happen out in the world are tragic and awful, and then they get into your daily world,
right.
And it's like you have to figure out a way to like work with that. It's like working on Hotel Rwanda with Paul Rusesabagina, who like was the real life hero, and you're just like, he had a dark sense of humor about everything he went through, and he had to.
Well, didn't Spider-Man, they had to reshoot a section with the Twin Towers because they were taken down, so everybody runs to cut it, and I'm like, why? Like, I wasn't intending to be insulting.
No.
Like, why can't it stay in the film sometimes?
Yeah, I think we live in a culture, in my job now, it's my job to look at where we are in culture and where we're going. And we live in a culture where I think the vast majority of people are reasonable and the vast majority of people are understandable, but everybody's so afraid of the extremes. We've given control over to the 10% on the left and the 10% on the right.
Right.
And there's reasons why that happens, and there's ways to undo that. But that's, we got off track, but that's how I got where I am. And what I do now is try to figure out that problem.
Actually, I don't think that's off track.
Yeah,
That'd actually be really nice moving as we continue to create stuff, and so do you. Like, rather than complaining, like, how do we gain some of that freedom back?
Yeah, I mean, at the fundamental core of it, we need to just, we're never honest with the public. We're never honest with ourselves. We're never honest about what we're doing. Like, social media isn't social media. It is a paid media platform. These are for-profit companies. I don't fault them for that. Like, if you created a widget and you wanted to sell a widget and make a profit off of it, you created the widget, right? This happens to be the widget. Now, it's the same thing for our news organizations, unfortunately, right? Which is they used to sell subscriptions, but now they sell clicks, which means that every headline is clickbait, right? Like, so I have zero respect for the LA Times because they are in desperate search of clickbait. So what happens is then social media algorithms are programmed to give more space to things that generate more engagement. They think like that's how their AI, and their AI is very smart, but it's not smart enough to have contextual understanding. So then
I did like the doc, the Social Dilemma doc. I thought that was actually pretty good.
Yeah, my staff watched that and then came in and said, "Are we part of the problem?"
Kinda, we all are a little bit.
And I was like, "Well, sort of, but we're working to solve the problem." But
I like that.
The answer is, there's all kinds of bots, and we could have a whole separate podcast on the Russian Internet Research Agency and the Chinese firewall, the Great Firewall, and all the millions of people. Like, when we do the math, it turns out about 2% of the internet is real. Like that's how crazy it is. And so what you want to do is you want to navigate that. But the easiest way to navigate that, because the reality is the vast majority of people live in the middle. They are not controversial. They do not think someone should be canceled. They do canceling it's a misnomer of a term anyway. Like, they want reasonable conversation, and people are allowed to make mistakes because people are human. Then you have the 10% on either side who are puritanical ideologues, and they're just as bad on the right as they are on the left. But those people aren't spending money. If the key out, the answer is the key out is paid media. Because if you promote your message to the right people, to a receptive audience, using paid media, the platform only care about engagement, but the one thing they care about more than engagement is money. So if you outbid the organic engagement by a penny, you win and you take that slot.
Got it.
So you can but we haven't gotten there. We're not honest about that.
Right.
So people are like, my post about how the world is full of rainbows and sunshine got 5 likes, but my post about how I'm gonna burn it all down got 50, and like suddenly people are in the wrong direction.
Yeah. So why is it that the 10 on the left and the 10 on the right are the ones that are allowed to cancel, and like they seem to have all the power? Because
we give in to them, right? You don't have to give in to them. Ralph Northam is still governor of Virginia, right? Like, he was like, okay, go screw yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I was like, how many things are you gonna have to censor out of this? But like,
you can say the F word. Well, it's fine. It's fine.
I mean, I am. Let's look at very timely, relevant, right? So the Cuomo investigation, right? So let me say that at the outset that everyone who makes an allegation should be heard, and every allegation should be investigated in a respectful manner, period. Now, that doesn't mean that every allegation is true, and it doesn't mean that every allegation is something wrong, right? Like, so there is an actual legal definition. This is where I get to like bring my like lawyerly phase in. There is a legal.
Oh, you mean from that college that you went to in New York that you said you would never go to?
Scholarships.
I don't listen to hypocrites.
There is a legal definition of sexual harassment, and there is a criminal definition of sexual harassment. We think out in the world that we could just say we feel sexually harassed. And I was like, cool.
That's Amanda Cooper with the bird watcher in New York. Like, you wouldn't do nothing wrong.
Right.
You're standing there watching birds.
So when we look at each of the individual allegations against Cuomo, like, I am fully in support of all of those allegations being investigated. I'm fully in support of him staying in office while they're investigated. And he, by the way, he will, because he's a strong motherfucker.
Yeah.
And I respect that about him. That we run into this question of like, do you let it, right? Do you, whatever happens, how do you respond? And the thing is, people just respond really crappily. You have Garcetti running out of the back of his house in a cop car trying to avoid protesters. I was like, you're a moron, right? Like, regardless of whether you're a smart policy tactician, public perception matters, and how you engage in that public perception and how you meet that public perception matters. But the answer is we don't have to let the extremes cancel each other. We don't have to listen to the extremes, right? You can amplify the voices of the middle and be respected for that. And so, and some people...
Preach, Craig. Preach.
Preach. It's the reasonable middle ground. We're really tired of people shouting at each other.
And I think sadly, the balanced or healthy middle, we're not as vocal as the ones that are bored looking for something to fight about.
And we're not vocal because we're like, okay, we've actually done market research on this. So people are not vocal for a couple of different reasons. One, to the extent they are vocal, platforms deprioritize it. It doesn't engage sharing, like it's not engaging. So then it feels like you're the only one that's being reasonable, which means that you don't really want to stick your neck out and be the only one. And then you are also afraid of the puritanical ideologues. And it's this like never ending cycle of whatever. And so everybody creates this bubble. They're like, I'm just going to
lack of unity and fear.
And it's like, I'm going to live inside my bubble and protect me and my family and my friends and carve out a good life. And I don't really need to put my neck out there, which I was I was a part of that, and then now I'm not a part of that. Now I'm putting my neck out there, and I'm like, oh hell, somebody's got to do it. So, but I am placing a bet that there's going to be a whole lot of people when there's somebody who's willing to put their neck out there. There are going to be a whole lot of people who are willing to do that too, as long as they know that they're not alone. And that's how we conquer that. We don't conquer this. I mean, listen, there are smart policies we can put in place. Like I don't matter. Doesn't matter what anyone says. Like Congress is not the quick policy making body that's gonna keep up with the internet. Like Lady Dianne Feinstein is certainly not my expert on social media algorithms, right? And she's crafting, her and her staff are crafting legislation. So that's not really the way to go. Like there are ways to do that, but the way is to use the system against itself, right? You can break a system. All you have to do is break the system and force the private companies to respond.
GameStop.
Yeah. So force companies to respond, right? So if you use the algorithms against themselves using paid media, then you can force the companies to find a better response. And they are trying. They are moving slowly. I have been privy to conversations at clients I can't mention who are part of that debate, who are actively trying to figure it out. But when you got to keep in mind, they're competing against 20 million click farmers in Southeast Asia, 4 million Chinese censors, 1 million people working for the Russian Internet Research Agency who are cyber terrorists, and that doesn't include the cyber terrorists out of Iran and China and the rest of the world. Like you gotta, like they're playing. If we're thinking that we're playing 4-dimensional chess just by getting by in life, they're playing like 19-dimensional chess, and everybody while the whole world is screaming at them, figure it out. Right. I'm like, it's not a productive way to go about it. That was a rant. Sorry.
No, we love it.
So
no, you're teaching me stuff. That's why you're here. I like to hear those kind of insights.
The viewers are like, what the hell is this conversation about?
Well, no, I asked it because, I mean, part of the reason we even created this is because, it's a lockdown, but also narrative stuff kind of hit the brakes. And I'm like, well, what else can we do that still engages, creates good content? I get to learn stuff. We get to brag about you. Like part of this podcast is finding.
I love people bragging about me. And I love the opportunity for us to I will never turn down an opportunity to talk about how we need to be honest with people. If we are just honest with people, they're a whole lot more receptive to anything you want to say. If you fuck up, you say, I'm sorry, this is what happened. This is why it happened. It's not an excuse. It's an explanation. I'm sorry, and I'm not going to do it again.
Also, it feels like lately there's been, if you make one mistake, you're out. And it's like the person who's judging you with that isn't perfect. And they couldn't live up to the standard they're holding you to.
Look at the Golden Globes.
I reserve the right to be wrong and change my mind sometimes. Why is that a problem?
Look at the Golden Globes. Everybody coming for the Golden Globes because they don't have a black member. I'm like, okay, but they are the most diverse organization in Hollywood, to be clear. They have Bangladeshis and Indians and Arabs and Africans and South Americans and Latin Americans. Like they don't have an American black member, but that's how we as Americans define black.
Right.
Like they like globally, that's not how every other country does it.
Right.
So we are imposing an American definition on ethnicity and race and picking out one race above all others on a global organization that happens to have 50 races and ethnicities. And we're saying you're racist. Meanwhile,
because you don't have an African American.
Right. Yeah. And so, for a foreign organization.
Exactly.
Right, ask any black African if they feel like they share an experience with an African American.
Right, exactly.
And I'm not saying they don't need to look for a black member, that they don't need to be more inclusive, that they don't need reforms. Absolutely. They need to make changes. But everybody coming for them about this, I'm like, all of these whitewashed publicity management, creative agencies, how many Deadline in the LA Times, how many Arabs are in the Deadline and LA Times newsroom? How many Bangladeshis? How many Indians?
Right.
But they can come for somebody else. I was like, you live in a glass house, motherfucker. You need to pause yourself, right? Like we all need to do better. Like long before diversity was a keyword, my staff was 55% BIOPC, 65% female, 35% LGBT, because I realized that everyone has a different perspective and they were hired based on perspective. And because I wanted different perspectives, that gave me different ethnicities, races, and backgrounds. But we also need to talk about socioeconomic diversity. We need to talk about do you have a poor person around you? Because that's a very, very different life. Do you, first generation, do you, there's so many aspects of diversity, but we're never honest about it. So I welcome any podcast, any conversation where we are honest.
I would be willing to bet that diversity with so many perspectives actually probably contributed to your success rather than hindered it by a lot. And I don't mean that in a shallow way, like different markets, different points of views, understanding different levels of economics. I mean, from your journey from no shoes to a whole wall, like how much more have you learned or?
100%. And by the way, I remember interviewing, God, I haven't thought about this memory in years. So you're getting a special one. So I remember I like.
Does it need a sound effect? Because I have sound effects. Okay, sorry.
We'll play like tinny music about back in the day. When I was interviewing to go to, yes. As RuPaul would say, yes, queen.
Sorry.
I love RuPaul. So I was interviewing to go to Harvard for undergrad, and like I didn't get in. And the woman interviewed me in Indianapolis, and I wasn't going to go anyway because who the hell had that kind of money? And they weren't offering me a scholarship. And she said, "What diversity do you bring to the table in whatever this was, 1999, 2000?" And I said to her, in an early prescient moment, I said, "How many poor white kids from the sticks who have never met a black person do you think you have in your school?" And
what was her response?
She was like, "Well, that's not how we view diversity." And I was like, "Okay, well, your view is very narrow."
Yeah.
And I didn't get in because I told her her view was very narrow. But diversity isn't just based on arbitrary definitions. If we move from, like, look at this, the movement right now, the cultural movement of hate against Asian Pacific Islanders, which is deplorable, right?
Yeah.
Why weren't we talking about this a year ago? Because we've been moving from one ethnicity to the other. First it was black, then now it's Asian, and like when are we going to get to Latino?
Yeah.
And within the Latino community, the hatred of different cultures because it's not a monolithic community.
Oh, we work at a restaurant with multiples, and they're always talking smack amongst themselves.
Yeah, but we're not ever honest, and we all are like, let's just pick the one thing to talk about. And I was like, the world is a complex place. But if we are reasonable and honest and we like are genuine, you can fuck up and people can accept your apology and you can move on. And then there's a whole tiny little group of puritanical ideologues who weren't loved enough as children and need more hugs, who are like angry about life. They now run Ground Game LA.
Can you be more specific?
But it's, if we just let those people live in their angry party, the rest of us can be angry, but we don't want to stay angry, and we don't need to stay angry. We can be hopeful and optimistic about the world.
I mean, if you don't have to name names, but maybe like some damage control you've had to do along the way with maybe like film production or individual people, how do you get ahead of that story and kind of change their narrative?
Yep. So much damage control. I'll take one I can talk about as a corporate disembodied sense. Yeah. So Verizon Media is a conglomerate. It's the third largest conglomerate of media outlets. Right after Facebook and Google, they have the third largest digital footprint in the world. But lots of people still read Yahoo. It's still a daily source of news for a lot of people. Lots of people use Yahoo Mail. They actually have a trust-based ecosystem that doesn't exist with some of the other social platforms. And I actually really respect the work that they're doing, and I know about that work. When they went from Oath to Verizon Media, they had to make a lot of hard choices. Like Oath was kind of a mess, right, of all kinds of things. And they came to us and they said, we're going to make a lot of hard choices, and we need you to buy us time in the industry. Like consumers weren't going to care one way or the other, but the industry was going to care, and an industry narrative can kill you. So after 3 rounds of layoffs and a $4.7 billion write-down, within 12 months, we had them named Media Brand of the Year by 3 different trade agencies by designing a series of concrete programs that showed that they were here to play, that these were smart decisions, and they were doing well. And they're led by an incredible CEO who's doing an incredible job, who stopped the bleeding, started the reforms, and all he needed was enough time to catch his breath to do that. And now they're great.
Is that what happens with most large companies? They just don't get that time
to
regroup and restructure. And
most large companies are run by 65-year-old white straight males with no self-awareness. So even if you gave them time, they would just be like a Roomba bumping into walls. And you see that reactionarily, because now the mandate, so it is illegal to hire someone based on race. But you go into any corporate room, and I've been in those corporate rooms, and everybody's saying, we need to hire a X, which is fundamentally illegal. Yeah. And you see that reactionary. You see that reaction with all of these straight white male CEOs in boardrooms saying, go find me a black woman, right? Or go find me a Latin whatever. And the thing is, I support diversity. But if you're finding tokens, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, you still got to find the best person.
They're not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even for us, I mean, I don't know the last time we had an audition since COVID, but I've been told by people, which I'm not going to name names, that you could be the best actor ever, but they're going to cast the 40-year-old black guy or Asian guy because you're too white.
We
and I'm like, okay, well, what if I was the best actor? Like, we don't care.
We get into this with there's this whole question of gay casting, right? Like, so should gay people are those the only people allowed to play gay roles? And I'm like, so you only want straight people to play straight roles?
Yeah.
Like, what?
It's called acting.
Yeah.
Did you see Tootsie?
Yeah.
Have you seen White Chicks? Which, by the way, Todd Tucker did the makeup for White Chicks.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Like, what if Daniel Day-Lewis?
White Chicks could never be made today.
Ever.
I saw
so
it on
many
TV the
shows,
other-
so many movies.
And I don't think that's good for America, right? And I don't think that most Americans feel that way. Like, I think the puritanical way.
Bill Burr does a whole bit on his Paper Tiger, where he talks about Bryan Cranston got a bunch of flack because he played a quadriplegic.
Yeah.
It's like, what did you, like, hello, I'm an actor. Like, am I not allowed to play that role? Apparently not.
I mean, what we've done is we've said, unless you are what you are trying to portray in life, there's no way that you can understand. And I think that's bullshit.
Yeah.
And that's bullshit on an acting level, and it's bullshit on a societal and cultural level, because what it does is it says, I don't have empathy, so I don't trust you to have empathy either. The answer
really
is,
well said.
that's what the problem is. And the problem is, I do have empathy.
Yeah.
So your inability to have empathy is not my problem. I sat down with to talk with a black trans woman who is becoming a great friend. I was so excited to meet her years ago. I've long admired her work. She was homeless, and then she's now getting her PhD at UCLA. Like, this woman's journey makes my journey look like I was coasting on roller skates.
Let's get her on.
Oh, yeah. Does she have shoes too?
Yeah.
You both have
she
your-
has some heels. It's amazing. But I said to her, I think, and she is one of the most reasonable, thoughtful people I know. And we had this conversation about the fact that, like, I don't understand your struggle, but I understand struggle, right? I understand when on the nonprofit we're working on, which we haven't even talked about, but like, people have asked me, they're like, well, how would you
We'll get to it.
how would, it's fine. It's people ask, how would you talk to somebody who doesn't look like you? How do they believe that they trust you? And my response is,
Are you human? Like, I learned to do that in 5th grade.
Yeah, we literally can now, we're now advocating that we should only have people trust people who look like them.
Yeah.
Like, this is stupid, right? Like, what kind of a bullshit question is that? And somebody says,
Isn't that the opposite of Dr. King, that you're not judged on the color of your skin, but the content of your character?
Yeah. Apparently, there are a whole lot of people who feel that should only apply to one race, which would make him roll over in his grave.
Right.
And that's a problem, right? Like, the thing is, we've gotten away from a society based on truth, honesty, and empathy. And if we stay in a society based on truth, honesty, and empathy, you are allowed to make mistakes. You are allowed to mess up. You are allowed to admit, oh, well, going to that party 20 years ago was a bad idea, right? Like, you know what? You went to the party.
This tweet from 2001 is going to cancel me.
Yeah.
When I was 14. Like,
Yeah, it's like, okay, like, since when? We went through, I represented Kobe for the last several years of his life. And, it's very public what happened 14 years prior.
Right.
And he had been a model citizen and a huge contributor to society. And we had modeled, we knew it was my job to make sure that narrative never overtook the work that we were doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the counter narrative of the angry people in the corner needed to not overtake the narrative. Now, thankfully, we weren't manipulating anything. We were allowing space for the public who loved him to have a conversation and a reasonable conversation. He had very publicly addressed those allegations and dealt with them very traumatically with him and his family 14 years prior.
Yep.
Now we want to come back because there is a movement in Hollywood, the Me Too movement, which I respect. I respect all of that movement. We want to come back and we want to dredge up something that was publicly litigated 14 years ago and ban someone from ever having anything to do with anyone ever again. Like, there's got to be, and to say nothing of the fact that the Me Too movement is incomplete in that it's like, it's like, let's pat ourselves on the back for doing this. I was like, cool. Do you want to start with the gay community? Because they never Me Too'd themselves. I mean, Bryan Singer Me Too'd himself right off a set, but like,
Right.
like the movement never got there. The movement never got to sports. The movement never got to music. So, but let's
Also, I think the narrative there, like, what about even a Robert Downey Jr.? Like, you're allowed, like, isn't that the stories we're supposed to champion? Hey, I made a mistake, or I wasn't doing well.
I got help. I
got help,
bettered
and
myself.
That's supposed to be a good thing.
It's literally the fundamental principle of our criminal justice system is that you pay your debt to society and you move forward, right?
And you make better choices.
And you make better choices. Now, if you didn't improve or you were a serial horrible whatever, like that's a separate conversation, sure.
Right.
But like there are a whole lot of people who made a mistake, and you know, you look at the Al Franken of it all, right? You're like, it's a single photo, and yet the Democrats are like, we need puritanical idealism of like, well, can't have that. I was like, that man was a talented policymaker and a good person, and we were like, all right, screw him.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it doesn't make sense. And by the way, the vast majority of the public doesn't feel that way either.
No.
Everyone's just afraid of the next headline.
But like you said before, they don't control the clickbait, and that's what everyone.
Yeah, because the average everyday American doesn't have you know $50,000 in media to toss in to defend themselves to push out their message.
And when did you going back to Kobe and working on the animated short that won him
Dear Basketball.
Oscar,
Dear Basketball? When did you come in, and what was just a quick, if you're allowed to talk about it, what you did on it?
Verizon had acquired Dear Basketball, and they said, Kobe wants to win an Oscar. Can you please talk to him? And so I was brought in, and I was like, all right, well, this is what we got to do. Like, this is the path. My thing is.
Can you break that down for us a little bit? Like, what the path would be?
So I methodically. My path that I do with anything is I take a look, whether it's Kobe or Dear Basketball or LA, I'm like, let's take a look at the entire landscape. We do not rest a judgment on anything, right? Like, I want to understand every nuance, every nook, every cranny, everything that could possibly move this. And so I did that with this animated short. You
also did that when you were an intern, which is probably what got you the job.
Right.
Yeah, it turns out that I might be broken in my head mentally, but it helps in life. This ability to dissect, because by the way, I believe, this is a side note on this, but this informs the whole thing, which is I believe every choice you make can matter, right? And when I was super poor and I had to stand in front of this open air deli at the Walmart, and all of these po' boys, which are not the lovely po' boys from New Orleans, they were like white hoagies with turkey meat and a packet of
like Wonder Bread.
Packet of mayonnaise and mustard in there. They were all priced the same, but some of them had more meat than other ones, right? So you had to like go through and look and see which one had more meat because you had more value for your money. And that meant that I could split the sandwich in half, and I could have half for lunch today and half for lunch the day after, right? Like that small decision of where that $2.50 went mattered. I bring that same philosophy to everything that I do, which is I don't obsess over it, but I'm informed about it. And so in the case of Kobe, it was like, okay, it's this branch, it's this process. So it's the animated and short film live action shorts branch,
right?
Which is weird because it used to be the shorts branch. It used to be live action shorts and animated shorts. And then they created animated feature, and they tossed a whole bunch of extra animators in there. This is the composition of the branch. This is the message that they would want to respond to. This is the message that matches where Kobe is. This needs to not be an egotistical play, which was a really hard because it was a 4.5 minute short about Kobe Bryant, and it was his love letter goodbye to basketball. Here's the brand equity we have for these people are based in LA and love Kobe Bryant. How do we leverage that brand equity? How do we get through the three processes? Because you've got to get shortlisted, then you've got to get nominated, and then you have to shift your audience to the full academy for a win. And then, so how do you reach these people? How do you engage them where they live their lives? Because you've got to stop asking, what message do I want to put out in the world? And you've got to start asking, what message are people ready to receive, and where are they, right, in receiving it? Mm-hmm. And so then we designed that campaign. Then Me Too broke, and it was like, all right, here's all of the layers that go in. But I didn't sit around when Me Too broke and said, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like, I had a colleague who was like, you need to get him to go on national television and address this directly. And it was, no, I don't. I don't need to hyper react to anything.
You didn't set up an Oprah interview?
Yeah. They wanted Robin Roberts, and I was like, no, we're good. We're good. Yeah, I was like, we're good. And you know, I have the counterculture opinion. I don't think that recent interview was a good interview. I don't think it was. I think it did what it did what everyone in that interview wanted it to do. Right. That doesn't mean it was a good interview. Right. But you know, and then we methodically went down that path with it was me and Molly Carter, who ran Kobe Inc., who is one of the smartest, most brilliant women in the world. And the two of us were lockstep every step of the way on every choice that we made. And we followed our path, the same path that we laid out 9 months before. But because we had taken into account every eventuality of who needed to see it, what they were going to think, how it was going to happen, we were prepared for whatever happened. And it was a close race. And I believe that that short deserved to win, and it won. But, Garden Party almost beat us, right? So, things happen.
Yeah. So on a campaign like that, what's your team like? Like how many? I know you said Kobe Inc. and you, but.
Yeah. So, I am never alone. I have a huge, incredible supportive staff. Now I'm chief strategy officer of an agency that has hundreds of employees. My team at that time, I had dozens of employees. So I've got social experts, I've got digital experts, I've got paid media folks, I've got creative. So all of those team members made everything happen, right? Like I'm the guy who has like the wild and crazy idea, but you do not want me to execute it, right? Like it would be like having me change the oil in my car. Like something's going to blow up. Like it's not going to work. Like I'm like,
he sounds like me.
Every organization needs a mad scientist, but you just got to have people that keep you from walking off the ledge.
Yeah, 100%. And I have the most incredible people around me in my personal life, in my professional life, in every aspect of my professional life. I love them to death. I would not be able to do what I do without all of them. I push them forward in everything that they do. They deserve all the credit in the world. Every mentor I've ever had. So I had a full team of digital, social, research, analytics, like people from every stretch of this. Like I had an army working on every aspect of this. It was my job to stay out of the weeds and stay looking at the big picture so that we didn't lose sight of where we were going. You don't want to get caught looking down the field at the next game, so to speak. Right?
In an Oscar campaign or a Golden Globe campaign, how... for an individual like Kobe or an actor and actress like a Jennifer Lawrence when she's going up for Silver Linings Playbook involved in a campaign for an Oscar or a Golden Globe?
Yeah, so it depends on a person-to-person basis how much they want to be. Some people are like, just tell me where to go and what to show up. Kobe was intimately involved. He was a well-informed individual. Yeah. So it was a lot of intimate conversations about what to do, where to go. But he was also somebody who trusted. He was like, I trust that you're an expert, right? Like I don't go to the doctor and tell them where to cut and how to treat. And I don't tell my hairstylist like how to cut my hair. I would look like a weed whacker. Yeah, it's super fun to be a doctor in that position. So yeah, but he trusted.
Can you lose a campaign by not doing anything?
Yes, and you can lose a campaign by doing too much.
Okay.
It's like a careful balance of everything. We're in the middle of a campaign right now, knock on wood, that we get good news coming out of tomorrow, but it's a careful conversation, and again, it's an interesting conversation because it's with an incredible short film that has a social justice message, and you need to embrace that message, but you also need to not just be concerned with the message that you are putting out in the world, but the message that the world is ready to receive, and have an honest conversation about what that is.
Awesome. So I know you have your own podcast, The World According to Craig.
Yeah, which is the world according to a lot of other people. It's a tongue-in-cheek title, thankfully.
What are we discussing on this? I mean, what kind of guests are you bringing on?
Yeah, so I bring on everyday individuals that I know who have really incredible stories that I think we can learn from. There's always a key takeaway from each of them about something we can apply to life. So with Vanessa, who was on my podcast, the amazing Black trans woman who's a PhD student at UCLA, it was really learning from her journey, and about hers was it's a phrase that I've told her that I'm openly stealing, which is it's not about bringing people to the table, it's about bringing the table to the people, right? And that was the key component. Everything she could be a puritanical ideologue with everything that had happened to her in life, with how the system had failed her, with all of those other things, and she instead turned that around and said, nope, I'm gonna make this better. I'm going to bring the table over here. I'm going to bring people who don't participate in those conversations. At the same time, I met my friend, Dr. Russell Bohr, who is the number 2 in the COVID unit at UCLA, and he designed the vaccination, who gets the vaccine when, and who has to die if we're short of resources. He designed all of those protocols. And we were talking about our relationship to medicine and our relationship to doctors, and like how we view medicine the wrong way. We keep thinking like medicine makes me better and doctors make me better, which is not true. Medicine keeps you alive so that your body can get better on its own.
Right.
And so it's always a reframe of something that we like to talk about that I think is going to be helpful to at least one person who watches it. And then every Thursday there's a straight to camera, sort of what I call off the cuff, which is a rant, which is sometimes me railing against Gen Z, sometimes me railing
what
against.
You brought us earlier was a great example of a rant. Well practiced.
I forgot what we were talking about the first 20 minutes.
Go ahead. So the rant on Thursdays?
Yeah, so rants on Thursdays, interviews on Tuesdays. And the rants are always informed by the people I've met and the people I've talked to. And it's generally on this topic. I find that I can really never shut up about honesty, empathy, and like compassion in the world.
It's amazing.
So, you know, I'm really proud of it. I don't have nearly the amazing setup that you do or the experience or the technical expertise, but I enjoy it. It's
this whole thing. We just threw this together real quick.
Where can we watch it? Or we want to plug you. So where can we listen, watch?
Oh yeah. So it's the world at Craig. So AT.
Okay.
Because the world according to Craig was too long. So things I should have thought about.
Now on
beforehand.
CBS.
I'll have the I'll have the handles in there. I'll get them from you when we're done.
The world at Craig on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So great. Check it out if you can. And I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely.
You're also working on an awesome nonprofit here in LA called Rise Together. What kind of issues you guys tackling? Like, what are you?
We're tackling one issue, and it's the biggest issue. So
make LA better.
Yeah, save Los Angeles.
Yeah.
This is the fundamental thing about LA is that why I approached it like I would any other client. Where's my value add, right? Like, what can I do that's different? And the reality is that we know the problems in LA, like we just don't give voice to them. So 220,000 people voted for Eric Garcetti in his first term as mayor out of a voter pool of 2.2 million. Lagos, Nigeria has a higher turnout rate for mayor. So 2022 is a make or break election for this city. And we know that we need people to show up and be emotionally invested. We know that 91% of people in Los Angeles agree on the issues that we need to talk about.
How do we know that? Like what?
Data, research, polling, consumer behavior. You don't get 91% of people to agree on anything like pizza toppings, much less issues. But things are
the best free throw shooter in the NBA is at 91%.
Right. So the people in LA agree, but they also agree that their elected officials don't share those same priorities. How a city is unanimous and its elected officials are not shows a really poor management of public perception and really poor leadership.
Sounds like a disconnect too between
100%
in charge and those who
right, because everybody in charge wants to say, well, I'm doing this great stuff, and I'm like, the people are not ready to hear your message. You are Kendall Jenner in a Pepsi commercial right now. Like it is really meeting people in their anger and frustration and leading them out of their anger and frustration to believe that there is more that is possible from this city and that they showing up can change that, right? We can have better than 10% turnout for a mayoral election, and we will. And when those people show up and vote from a middle ground, from a reasonable middle where 85% of people live, we will find ourselves in a much better city where we're practically addressing real changes to policy. You want to talk about what should we do about homelessness? What should we do about affordability? Well, those are the top two issues. What should we do about crime and policing, social justice? I've read 40,000 pages of policy materials at this time. I will have an encyclopedic conversation about it. But we are not at a place where people are willing to join that conversation. So our sole focus at Rise Together is getting people to participate in that conversation, because otherwise when the time rolls around later this year and early next, when people are running for office, it's just going to be a whole bunch of insular candidates and institutional candidates who've always been in elected office for 20 years talking to each other and hoping that a narrow slice of the public is willing to listen to them. I think we can and we will do better by bringing more people to that conversation. Everyone wants to have a conversation on the merits. Me too. Let's have a conversation on the merits. Yeah. I believe that my merits will win, but ain't nobody gonna have a conversation about anything if you don't have the other half of the conversation.
I feel like if you turn on the news right now, they literally are saying defund the police and there's more crime than ever. So it's like, how are we? Yeah, it's like you're giving people two different. Like,
we've got to remove this idea that everything's zero-sum politics. We say that
or binary. Yeah, just one or the other.
Yeah, in order to be pro-social justice, you have to be anti-police, which is not true. In order to be pro-development, you have to be anti-community, which is not true, right? Like, there's so much more we can do by focusing on that middle ground. And that same technology, that same media that we talked about, that's what we're doing. We are shifting consumer perception by amplifying the voices of the middle at Rise Together. And it's designed to shift the entire ground under the 2022 race to make sure that it is focused on reasonability and on the priorities of the people, as opposed to releasing a new drone noise ordinance in the middle of COVID, right? Like tone deaf. So I'm real proud of it, and
How long has that been up and running?
So it was a year and a half worth of research and analysis before we launched at the beginning in January 2021. So we've been up and running just a little over 2 months, have raised several $100,000 and continue to raise money. So if anybody's listening,
congratulations!
Thanks, RiseTogether.la, go and donate. And it's great. We've got to raise and
he's doing better than us. Dude, yeah. He's
In
only
what,
been up for 2
fundraising?
months. Yeah.
Well, he has a much better cause. We're just talking.
That's also a good point. So I'll stop talking now.
So we were gonna raise and spend $2 million in consumer media. There's no fancy consultants are getting paid on anything. This isn't your typical political organization.
RNC isn't doing this pro bono.
Anyway, everybody's volunteering.
Yeah.
So that's where we are on that front, which is really exciting. Our campaigns will start rolling out in May, and we'll be in market, and then you'll see it all over the city. And it's consumer marketing. It's what I do every single day. It's shift big picture consumer sentiment, and in this case, to a place where they already want to go.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to convince people of something they don't want. People want to move forward. They want to believe.
91%.
They are optimistic about the city. 75% of people are hopeful about the city's future, even while the same 75% don't trust the hell out of anyone who's elected to run this city. That says to me there's a disconnect, and if we remove one of those things, the other thing can progress even further. So
that's amazing.
It's really exciting. And, I think we can get a raft of people who, a third of city council is under active criminal investigation, right? Like the only people to leave, the only people to leave city council, the only way to leave city council is to go get elected to another office or go to prison. That apparently is the LA model.
Wow.
And so, we're looking for a different model.
Yeah.
The one that isn't based on corruption in prison, and the one that isn't based on 15 people running their council districts as if they were oligarchs. But that's, like that's a whole
That's
other
what you
podcast.
do in your spare time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Spare time. Yeah.
Well, we're on board, so let us know how we can help you.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
RiseTogether.la. And we'll have a whole lot of public conversations. We'll just set up this setup outside my house, and we'll have a public conversation in front of everybody, and it'll be great.
This doesn't move easily, so maybe we can get them here instead.
It's about bringing the table to the people.
Exactly.
Not
Well, in this case, it's wired to the wall, so it doesn't move. I'm so sorry.
Valid. Okay. Noted. We'll figure out an alternative.
Would you? I mean, it seems a little bit smaller in comparison to everything you just spoke about, but would you give us a quick 3-minute of your actual job? Because I know you're doing multiple things all around it because you're insane in a good way, because people with broken childhoods usually overachieve.
My therapist says it was either heroin or this. So
I think you made the good call there.
I've
but
never done heroin, so I'm guessing. maybe not.
Either way.
Give us a little. I know. I'm looking at your resume over here, and it just is pages long. But give us a quick. Just give us a quick.
Well, everything we've talked about is actually the product of what I do for a living, right? Which is I work for one of the largest entertainment culture marketing firms in the country, and our focus is on using where culture is to help brands meet people where they live their lives. And I serve as chief strategy officer, so it's my job to oversee digital, social research, and analytics. But at the core of it, I oversee a strategic business consultancy where we look at where society's going in a year, 18 months, 3 years, 5 years down the road. And we help clients, people, and companies meet society where it's headed instead of responding to it in real time. And it's the idea of literally trying to predict the future, which is fun, but we've gotten pretty good at it. I was the only person at the beginning of COVID to remind everyone that the pandemic of 1918 ended in December of 1920.
Yep, and then you had the Roaring '20s.
Yep.
Right after.
So I'm proud of our achievements on that vein. So I spend my day doing what all of this is in my personal life. Apparently, once you start singing a tune, you just sing the tune everywhere, and so.
I think Wilson Luna said the way you do one thing is the way you do everything.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's totally true, but I
don't know if it's totally true, but
it's
there's definitely
mostly. Yeah, if you're late one
theme.
place, you're probably late everywhere.
Right.
Yeah. So it's it's great on that front in that we work for major multinationals, we work for startups, we work for individuals, and we really try to look at, okay, what is your footprint in the world? Who is your audience, and what do they want to hear? And then what do you want to tell them, and how do we marry those two messages together? And use every part of the ecosystem to attach to that. So it can be launching a new taco, or it can be changing the world.
Man, tacos do sound good right now.
For a small brand like say Paper Crane Productions.
That's too specific. Just say a small podcast.
Say a small podcast. What's the most valuable thing you think right now? Is it getting your social going? Is it like blowing up on IG and Twitter and finding that audience, or is it literally like making just like good quality content, keeping your head down, do good work, and eventually you'll get rewarded?
So all of the above. So the answer is, from a strategic perspective, I would say my job would be to work with somebody on what's your message and what are you selling and is it good quality content. And then all those people who work with me who are smarter than me would tell you, here's how you get your social up, here's how you get your engagement up.
I see.
Like, here's what you need to be doing in paid media. Like, the thing that I am proudest of is that I know what I don't know, and I know enough to be dangerous in almost every category and not enough to be successful.
Right.
So I work with a whole lot of people who would be like, here's how you do it on social. Here's how you do it. But I will tell you, you can get every tactic right, from social to paid media to guests and all those other things. But if you don't have the core, if you don't have a message that people want to hear or are ready to hear, it doesn't matter what you do over here, you're never going to go anywhere. Yeah. So my job is that core, and then their job is
packaging and presentation.
Putting a bow on it. And
So you're like Steve Woz, and you have surrounded yourself with a bunch of Steve Jobs.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You never,
Do you know
No.
that
he,
analogy?
no, you didn't read his book. It's a good book.
No,
I read it twice.
All right. I have
It's
to tell
really
about
good. He basically said, I created one of the best software companies in the world in terms of its actual software, but it would have stayed in my mom's garage. And no one would have ever known about it had someone not come along and help me sell it.
Yep.
Enter Steve Jobs. And obviously that's a very simplified version, but you know, you have that ability to find the burning ember, that core, the message, the story. It would be the script for a movie, and then it sounds like
then you get the director, you
get everybody else
you get the
attached.
financing, you get the
Yeah, and I would get the writer. Like, I would just know what that core burning ember is. And I believe that core burning ember is that we are in a place where people are craving truth and authenticity and empathy and nonpartisan, non-ideologue, right? Like reasonability. My whole thing is, it's not about right or left. It's not about rich or poor. It's not about this or that. It is about reasonability. We are just a group of people who need to be reasonable, and reasonability is based in honesty and empathy and truth. It is like, okay.
And also being allowed to hold different positions.
Yeah. I disagree with a whole hell of a lot of people, and I work with them.
Yeah.
Like, we have donors to Rise Together who ran Bernie Sanders' campaign in California, and I've got donors to Rise Together who donate to Turning Point USA. Those two people agree on one thing, which is that we are the way forward.
Right.
I think also it kind of comes to like, nothing in life is really that binary. And when you get to that level of Protestants warring with Catholics, or Hutu and the Tutsi, or the Crusades, or the Spanish Inquisition, like it does one thing all really well. It kills people.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the one thing they all have in common when you get to that level of, I'm all right, you're all wrong, anything else, you're done.
Any progress society has ever made has been the result of coming together in spite of our differences to build on common ground, not by living in our differences and asking people to come to us.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, see, there it is. That's our takeaway for today.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Glad we got that out.
No, I've exhausted you. Thank you so much.
We got a little more time. Like,
is there anything that you want to bring up that you want to talk about that we haven't covered?
No, I think we literally hit on everything that I could possibly ever say.
That's not true. That is not true. Don't lie to us, sir.
We can do a whole separate...
We want honesty here and truth at this podcast.
We could do a whole separate episode on the underbelly of the internet. We could do a whole separate episode on LA and how we can save this city. We do a whole separate episode on solving homelessness. Like, it's actually solvable. I want everyone to believe that solving homelessness is possible. It's just the people making the decisions are making really poor decisions. We can do all those. We could just have our own podcast. We can have like a spin-off, right? This can become Frasier to Cheers.
Every Sunday. Then let's just finish off with a future question then. Tell me what direction you would like to see. I guess things are starting to turn on. Mm-hmm. Restaurants are theoretically about to maybe open.
Yep,
things are lifting.
I'm going to go to brunch after this. It's great.
So what is one thing you're, I guess, ready for or excited about for where you're headed, company or personal? Mm-hmm. And then maybe what's one thing you're not totally ready for?
So I am thrilled about Rise Together. I think that we can and will save this city. And we save this city by getting the people of this city emotionally invested in saving this city, right?
And choosing to care
and choosing to care and operate from a reasonable middle ground. I think we can and will shift the ground under the elections of 2022, and that will lead to much, much better outcomes. We can solve homelessness. We can solve affordability. This isn't rocket science, right? Like, I'm not trying to reverse engineer a plane. The next 6 months is the public rollout of that, so I am thrilled about that. What I am not thrilled about is that until we save those things, like that'll be a pilot for all of America, to be honest. Like if we can save LA, so goes California, like it's the second largest city in the country. We can be a pilot role model for how a city should embrace and interact and engage and support its people. What I'm not excited about is in the meantime, until we accomplish that, there are a whole lot of people listening to puritanical ideologues who want to sell you some version of snake oil that makes you feel better about life because you think that you are holier than thou, a self-appointed arbiter of X topic. And I am excited for those people to no longer control the narrative, and I'm really not excited for the period until we can get there.
Have you ever thought about running for office?
A lot of people keep bringing that up to me.
I'm literally want to vote for you like right now and be like on your team.
Well, for $50,000, we can vote for.
A lot of people keep bringing that up. My response is I am really, really focused on getting Rise Together set up, and because that is the without which nothing for anyone running for office, no matter who's running for office. But a lot of people keep bringing that up to me. So that is a conversation to have.
So we're going to have interviewed you before you become the governor someday. Thank you for
Thank you so much for having me.
Insight. I think we might end up bringing this guy back. He knows how to
Well, we have like 85 different topics we could talk about.
It shocks me every time I get invited back anywhere. So I'm like, awesome.
What? You're competent, you care, and you're interesting. Like, I don't know what else to, like, that's enough.
No, the nicest things that anyone has ever said about me. You should see what people say behind closed doors.
It's on the prompter behind you. So we just read off.
Jen just texted me exactly what to say to you.
Amazing.
Well,
thank you so much for
Craig,
having me.
thank you for being here and for dropping all the wisdom and just spit. I just love getting to let people talk about what they love to talk about. It'll be just fine.
Oh, I can get a soapbox, carry one around with me.
All right. Well, for today, that is it. Thank you for joining us for another episode of So How'd You Get Here? I'm Angelo. This is Tony, and we will see you next week.